Imagine waking up one morning to silence, not peace, but silence, the kind that follows catastrophe. Outside your window, the world feels strange, heavy, unfamiliar. The air is humid, unnaturally warm. The sky seems swollen, like it's holding back something it can't contain. You turn on the news. The words don't make sense at first. Polar ice caps gone, not melting, not receding, gone. Overnight, every glacier, every frozen sheet of ice at both poles, every chunk of the Greenland ice shelf and Antarctic plateau has vanished. Oceans have swollen, as if they'd been waiting for this moment. Imagine that. The Arctic Ocean, once a kingdom of white, now open water as far as satellites can see. Antarctica, no longer a frozen desert, but a vast, blackened continent, rock and mud, exposed to the light for the first time in tens of millions of years. Rivers the size of seas pour from it into the ocean, churning and brown. It's not a slow crisis anymore. There's no debate, no projection, no century-long forecast. It happened, all of it, in one night. Within hours, coastlines redraw themselves. Maps become obsolete. The sea has risen by more than 65 meters, over 200 feet. Cities that once seemed untouchable, cities of power and memory gone. New York, London, Mumbai, Shanghai, Sydney, Alexandria, entire civilizations swallowed in silence. It's not a flood, exactly. It's an erasure. Imagine the footage, drone shots sweeping over empty skyscrapers jutting out of brown-green water. The Statue of Liberty, only her torch visible. The pyramids of Giza standing in the middle of an endless lagoon. Venice is gone without a ripple. The world has changed shape overnight. At first, people think the number is wrong. 65 meters. That can't be right. But the numbers hold. It's the sum of all that ancient ice to the vast glaciers of Greenland, the thick frozen deserts of East Antarctica, all turned to water. Scientists had warned that if it ever happened, sea levels would rise by dozens of meters, but the idea had always belonged to the far future. Centuries ahead, until now, you can almost picture it the night before. Cold and quiet at the poles. Then, something shifts. Maybe heat trapped deep in the ocean. Maybe something cosmic or something human that went too far. Whatever the cause, it's done. The white has turned to blue. And now, the planet is heavier, literally. Billions of tons of water have shifted from land to ocean, and that shift has tilted the Earth's balance ever so slightly. The rotation has changed by fractions of a second. The equator bulges differently. The magnetic field twitches, even time itself, measured in the precision of atomic clocks, feels it. The first global communication networks fail by mid-morning. Fiber lines and coastal power grids go underwater. Entire countries vanish from the map of the internet. Governments go dark. Satellite images become the only window left into the new world, an endless shimmer of water where continents once curved gently into the sea. And the human stories begin. Millions trapped in coastal cities, forced to flee inland through highways jammed with vehicles, carrying what they can. But the truth is, there's nowhere far enough to run. The water keeps advancing. By nightfall, half of humanity is displaced. It's not just a flood, it's the collapse of geography. As the sun sets on that first day, it sets on a smaller world, not in size, but in land. What's left are the highlands, the mountain ridges, the old heartlands of continents now transformed into islands. People cling to the uplands, the last dry edges of a drowned civilization. But the flood is only the beginning, because as the ice melts, it doesn't just raise the oceans, it releases what's been trapped for millennia. Ancient air, frozen pathogens, long-buried carbon. The world is about to breathe the past again, and with that breath, everything begins to change. Imagine standing on what used to be a hill, now a shoreline. You can hear it, the sound of the new ocean. Not calm, not gentle. It's restless, unbalanced, as if it doesn't yet know where it belongs. The tides are wild. Currents rage where there used to be farmland, forests, and towns. The sea is confused. It's too big for its basins, and the earth hasn't yet settled into its new rhythm. The air feels different too. Heavy, damp. It carries the faint metallic taste of a changing planet. Because with the polar ice gone, the earth has lost something invisible but vital, its breath. For millions of years, those frozen poles were like the lungs of the planet. They reflected sunlight, cooling the air, keeping winds moving in steady patterns. Without them, sunlight now pours in, unbroken, heating the oceans more than ever before. The blue planet, once balanced between ice and water, now tips toward fire. Within days, the temperature begins to climb. The dark oceans absorb the heat that the bright white ice once reflected. Global temperatures soar. Air currents shift violently. Storms begin to form where they never existed. The North Atlantic Current, the great conveyor of the planet's heat, collapses. Weather as we know it dies. Imagine it, Europe turning colder as tropical heat bypasses it. The Amazon suffocating under endless rain becomes a swampy inland sea. Central Africa scorches under cloudless skies. Australia disappears beneath a belt of permanent storms. The climate, no longer moderated by the polar caps, spins out like a gyroscope losing balance. And beneath the sea, something else awakens. As the ice melted, it released not only fresh water but air that had been sealed away since before humans learned to speak. Ancient bubbles of carbon dioxide and methane burst into the atmosphere, silent and invisible. They mix with the greenhouse gases already there, forming a deadly cocktail. Within a week, global CO levels double. The greenhouse effect ignites like a feedback loop. The planet begins to cook itself. It's not dramatic at first, just a few degrees warmer each day. But those degrees mean everything. Crops fail, rivers evaporate faster than they flow, coral reefs bleach and crumble. Marine life, confused by the sudden change in salinity and heat, drifts toward extinction. The sea becomes empty, except for the creatures that thrive in chaos. You can imagine the skies hazy golden orange, full of moisture that can't find a place to fall. The air feels thicker. Breathing becomes harder near the coasts. Swarms of insects move inland, following warmth and decay. The balance of ecosystems begins to collapse. In some places, nature adapts fast. Tropical forests creep northward. Vines overtake cities that haven't even finished flooding. Meanwhile, humanity scrambles for high ground, literally and politically. The governments that remain try to calculate what's left of the Earth's habitable land. The numbers are grim. Only a fraction of the continents remains above sea level. Canada, Siberia, the Andes, the Himalayas, parts of Central Africa. These become the new centers of civilization. Everything else is gone or dying, but it's not just the land that changes. It's gravity itself. Ever so slightly, the redistribution of all that melted ice shifts the planet's mass, altering sea levels unevenly. Some places drown deeper, others rise unexpectedly. Coastlines aren't stable anymore. Whole new seas form inland. The Amazon basin becomes an ocean. Central Asia turns into a vast archipelago, and the Mediterranean merges with the Black Sea into one massive inland floodplain. And still, the water rises. By the end of the first month, the Earth's reflection, the albedo, has dropped to its lowest level in human history. The planet absorbs sunlight faster than ever before. What was once a delicate thermostat is now a runaway furnace. The balance of energy that took billions of years to form is gone in a season. Imagine it from orbit Earth, once painted with white poles and green continents, now gleaming with endless blue and storm gray. Beautiful, in a way that hurts. The world looks alive, but it's struggling to breathe. The scientists who survived the flood know what's coming next. Without the polar ice, without those ancient mirrors of light, the planet will not stop warming. And what melts first, the ice has now unleashed what burns next. Because beneath those vanished glaciers, something else was waiting. Frozen for millennia, preserved in the permafrost, something older than humanity itself. And as the Earth warms, it begins to wake up. Imagine the Arctic tundra, once locked in eternal frost. For thousands of years, it held secrets beneath its surface. Mammoths, forests, spores, and the memories of ancient air. Now all of it lies exposed under the open sky, steaming and thawing like something alive again. The smell comes first, a heavy, earthy scent of decay, soil that hasn't touched the air since before civilization began. Then the gases rise: methane, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, invisible but potent, the planet's own buried breath, freed all at once. It's a chemical scream, silent but unstoppable. Every cubic meter of that ancient ground holds stories, fossils, and something far more dangerous: frozen pathogens, viruses that once spread through ice age ecosystems, sealed away by time, bacteria that adapted to cold and darkness. As the permafrost melts, they return, and they find a new world, unprepared. It starts in Siberia, a small settlement near what used to be the Yamal Peninsula. People fall ill with a strange fever. Doctors think it's something ordinary, a flu, a waterborne infection from the floodwaters, but it spreads fast, too fast. Samples taken from a thawed reindeer carcass reveal a virus never catalogued by modern science. Its structure is ancient, its behavior unpredictable. It doesn't match anything known. From there, the contagion moves silently, carried by air, by water, by desperate refugees fleeing inland. The world, already broken by flood and famine, now faces an invisible enemy from its own past. The irony isn't lost on anyone. Humanity spent centuries digging up its history. Now history digs up humanity. Meanwhile, the physical planet keeps reshaping itself. Antarctica, stripped of ice, begins to reveal more than just rock. Beneath its surface lie the fossils of forests, rivers, and once living things from an age before the dinosaurs disappeared. The continent breathes again, exhaling ancient spores and organisms dormant for millions of years. Some are harmless, some aren't. Imagine standing on the new Antarctic shore, black volcanic sand where ice once glittered. The wind carries the scent of sulfur and wet stone. Small, mossy plants begin to sprout, fed by warmth and water. The land looks alive again, but it's not the life humanity remembers. This is a resurrection of the ancient world. The oceans, too, are changing. The sudden flood of fresh meltwater has upset the delicate balance of salt and temperature that drives marine circulation. Currents die, oxygen drops, and in the silent depths, entire ecosystems collapse. Fish suffocate, coral reefs vanish, jellyfish bloom in their place, translucent, mindless, eternal. The sea becomes thick with them, pulsing like a living lung. With the poles gone, the deep ocean no longer knows cold. Its temperature rises, and methane clathrates. Frozen pockets of gas buried beneath the seabed begin to rupture. Columns of bubbles rise through the water, venting into the sky. The process accelerates the greenhouse effect further. The Earth enters a feedback loop that no amount of technology can reverse. Imagine this chain reaction from above, a planet shedding its memory. The ice that once sealed its history has turned to steam. The ground that once preserved its secrets now exhales them into a feverish sky. Every ancient element, every trapped molecule, every silent organism now rejoins the living world, uninvited. And humanity, it retreats to the mountains, the last high places. Refugee cities rise where glaciers once stood. The Himalayas, the Rockies, the Andes, these become the last frontiers. Nations form new borders drawn by altitude. Currency becomes meaningless. Water, food, and elevation define survival. Satellite transmissions flicker across the few working networks. Scientists gather in what's left of high-altitude labs, trying to understand what's coming. But the truth is, Earth has already crossed the threshold. The cycle that began with melting ice is now self-sustaining. Even if humanity could freeze the poles again, the planet's chemistry has shifted too far. And yet, amid the ruin, life persists. Algae bloom in the new oceans. Strange plants adapt to the new humidity. Birds migrate to peaks that used to be covered in snow. Nature, relentless as always, begins to rebuild in ways no human could predict. The question isn't whether Earth will survive, it will. The question is what kind of Earth it will become, because in the melting of the poles, the planet didn't just lose its ice, it lost its memory of us. Imagine the world 100 days after the melt. The seas have stopped rising not because they've reached their limit, but because there's nothing left to melt. Every last sheet of ice, every glacier, every frozen river is gone. The planet is no longer divided by seasons. It has only one warm, wet, and unending. The new Earth is an oceanic world. What used to be the Arctic is now a vast inland sea stretching from northern Canada to Siberia. The Antarctic, once a fortress of ice, has turned into a dark, humid continent laced with newborn rivers that pour endlessly into the swelling Southern Ocean. The world's geography has been rewritten. From orbit, Earth looks almost alien. Only the tallest mountains break the endless blue. The Himalayas rise like islands. The Andes form a thin spine through the clouds. Africa has become a scattering of highland archipelagos. And in what used to be North America, only the Rockies and parts of Appalachia remain above water. The peaks, like stepping stones of a lost civilization. Humanity survives where it can. Coastal civilizations are gone. The survivors have moved inland, or upward, building new settlements on the remnants of old mountaintops. Floating cities drift where once there were plains. They are built from scavenged metal, solar panels, and desperation. Networks of rafts and barges become the new continents, tethered to each other by cables and faith. Imagine walking through one of these new settlements, a floating city made of fragments, pieces of bridges, ferries, solar sails stitched into canopies. The air smells of salt and metal. Children learn to swim before they learn to walk. Fresh water is precious, drawn from the rain or filtered from the sea. The horizon is no longer land. It's an endless shimmer of blue, dotted with the ghosts of skyscrapers below. People call this time the Age of Water, and in a way it feels poetic, humanity returning to the ocean that birthed it. But there's nothing romantic about it. The salt corrodes everything. Crops are scarce. Food comes from algae farms and synthetic vats. Fishing fleets sail over submerged forests and forgotten cities, their nets scraping rooftops instead of coral. The remnants of governments try to cling to order. The United Nations moves to the Tibetan Plateau, one of the few stable regions left. From there, leaders communicate with scattered enclaves through solar-powered radios, relays on mountain peaks, and drones that deliver messages instead of packages. The concept of a nation fades. The world has become a collection of islands sharing a single, drowning sky. And yet, in this quiet apocalypse, there's beauty. At dusk, the water glows golden. The clouds reflect the color of old fire. Dolphins swim through the flooded ruins of human cities. Whales return to regions they abandoned centuries ago. Coral begins to grow again on the bones of our world over steel, glass, and concrete. Nature adapts faster than we do. But the cost is unmeasurable. Billions lost. Entire languages gone. History rewritten not by war, but by tide. Still, humanity clings on. Floating schools teach children about a world they will never see. A world with forests, snow, and cities that didn't float. They learn of animals that no longer exist and ice that once defined the poles. It sounds mythical to them. They can't imagine a sky that wasn't humid, a sun that didn't burn through haze, or an ocean that had boundaries. Above all, they're told about time, how one night changed everything, and how every generation before them ignored the warnings. But as the decades pass, a new kind of human begins to emerge, skin darker from constant sun, lungs broader from thick air. People learn to live with the sea. They dive deeper, travel farther, and rebuild slowly, not on land, but upon the waves. Humanity begins to evolve again, not technologically but biologically. The ocean has taken the earth back, but it hasn't taken everything. The human spirit, small and stubborn, continues to adapt, and perhaps, in time, it might even thrive again. But before that future can take shape, something else begins to stir beneath the surface, something vast, ancient, and waiting. Because the deep ocean, warmed and awakened, has secrets of its own. Imagine the ocean at night, vast, endless, and silent. But beneath that dark surface, the world is changing again. The deep sea, once frozen and still, has warmed, and when the deep warms it moves. Ancient tectonic stresses awaken. Earthquakes ripple through the ocean floor. Dormant volcanoes stir to life. What humanity thought was the end of the old world is only the beginning of another. Hydrothermal vents glow like constellations beneath the waves. They release minerals and heat, forming clouds of life where none existed before. Microbes, awakened from the abyss, begin to evolve at an astonishing pace. In this new, hot and hungry ocean, life finds a way, as it always has. Tiny plankton absorb the new warmth, feeding new food chains. Strange jellyfish, translucent and vast, dominate the seas. The deep ocean becomes a laboratory of creation, rewriting evolution in real time. Humanity watches from above, fragile and curious. From their floating cities, scientists lower sensors into the depths, studying the rebirth of the planet. What they find both terrifies and fascinates them. The chemistry of the oceans has changed. New elements circulate. New bacteria produce oxygen in ways unseen for millions of years. The seas that once drowned humanity now begin to sustain it again. Slowly, the planet stabilizes. The constant storms fade into seasonal patterns. Clouds thin. Rain begins to follow rhythm again. Temperatures, though still high, settle into balance. The earth, wounded but alive, begins to heal itself. It's not the same world, it never will be, but it is alive, and that matters more than anything. Generations pass. Children are born who have never known the sound of wind through trees, but who can read the language of waves. They map the underwater ruins of old cities, treating them as sacred monuments, reminders of both brilliance and blindness. They dive through glass towers now home to coral gardens, where fish swim through office windows and whales hum through hollow streets. The past lies beneath them, but it doesn't haunt them, it teaches. The human story, it seems, has circled back to its beginning, to the sea. Once life began here, in warm waters beneath a young sun. Now, after all our striving, it begins again in the same place. The difference is awareness. The survivors know they are part of the planet now, not above it. They build with respect for the tides. They harvest without greed. They study without ownership. The arrogance that once defined the species has been stripped away by salt and loss. In time, the planet reshapes its own equilibrium. The greenhouse gases stabilize, absorbed by new forests that grow along the highest ridges. The ocean, rich with plankton, becomes the world's greatest engine again, breathing, producing oxygen, pulling carbon from the air. The atmosphere clears, the horizon turns blue again. And in this new clarity, the stars return faint at first, then brilliant. The people of the floating world gather to watch them. They whisper stories of the ancestors who lived on land, who built towers to reach the sky, and who lost everything because they forgot how fragile the balance was. But the new generation understands that balance now. They live by the rhythm of the tides. Their calendars follow the currents. Their prayers are to the water. The ocean is no longer their enemy, but their teacher. Imagine it, an earth that has reclaimed itself. No borders, no nations. Just scattered islands of humanity drifting across a vast blue sphere. Technology rebuilt, not for conquest, but survival. Energy drawn from the sun and the sea. The mistakes of the old world turned into lessons carved into memory. And somewhere, deep beneath the surface, frozen layers of salt and sediment begin to harden again. Over centuries, the poles will return, not as they were, but in new forms. The planet always finds its balance, though never in the same way twice. The age of ice gave way to the age of water. And the age of water, one day, will give way to something else. Because the story of Earth is not about endings, it's about cycles. Each catastrophe writes the blueprint for what comes next. And as the waves settle and the skies clear, one truth remains. The planet never needed us, but we always needed it. So, imagine that world, calm, glimmering, reborn, a blue marble spinning in silence, alive, changing, enduring. The story of the flood has ended. The story of the sea has just begun.